Story 1. She opened her bedroom door to her favorite roommate standing in the hall. Eyes narrowed. "Who's in there with you?" Mara blinked. "No one?" The roommate glanced past her shoulder and went pale. "Then who was that?" Mara had always carried a private superstition, felt more than believed, that if she named a fear, it might hear her back. In college, she shared a rental with 3 other girls, all their rooms snug off a long hallway, most with doors that opened straight outside. Mara's door opened to the back of the driveway, easy for visitors, easy for shadows. She kept her head down, studied, slept light. Long before the house and the driveway door, there'd been the dream. Elementary school winter. The memory filed under donuts because that's where it began. In her dream, her mother took her to the shop before school. Sweet oil, warm glaze, a row of pink-striped gum by the register. She asked for a pack. Her mother paid. Then a figure stepped forward. Too tall for your average human. Long coat, fedora dark brim that erased his face. He didn't speak. He just raised a hand, palm out. "Give it." The dread arrived like ice on her scalp. She knew, without reason, without any words from him, something bad would happen if she said no. So she held out the gum. He took nothing. He took everything. She woke shaking, convinced he could follow. The same brand of gum waited inside her real room, bought on a recent trip. She hid it in the plastic fridge of her play kitchen, shut the tiny door, and slept in her brother's room for a week. Every morning she checked the little fridge. The gum stayed. The feeling stayed longer. Years sanded the edges. She never saw him again. Not exactly. Just a way a hallway could seem deeper than it was. Just the reflex to keep a light on. When she finally returned to her own bed as a kid, nothing had moved but her mind. Still, she learned the routine. Avoid telling the story out loud. Avoid keeping gum in sight. Avoid looking too long at a closet seam. Small prices, she told herself, for quiet. In the college house, the roommate didn't take her first answer. "Swear you were alone," she insisted, already stepping past Mara into the room. She checked the closet, checked under the bed, cracked the exterior door and scanned the driveway. The others peeked down the hall, amused, and then not. Once the room had been proven empty, in that way people prove things, by touching every ordinary object, Mara asked, keeping her voice casual, "Why did you think I wasn't alone?" "When you opened the door," the roommate said, "someone was behind you." "What did they look like?" "Tall, coat, a hat. I couldn't see his face." Her heart dropped. She didn't explain. For days after, she watched her doorway the way she used to watch a toy fridge, waiting for a sign of being seen back. A few weeks later, she was half listening to a documentary about sleep and paralysis, when strangers on the screen described the same silhouette she'd been avoiding for years. The hat, the coat, the absence of a face. She called the roommate in. "Is this who you saw?" Immediate, unthinking. Yes. The image she could not shake was not from the documentary, and not even from the hallway. It was from the donut shop where the world had first gone thin, where a hand had lifted, palm out, patient, an adult's uncertainty in the shape of a demand. In that stillness, she'd given up a pack of gum to a mouth that wasn't there. Now she stood in a different doorway years later, and the shape of the question hadn't changed. She felt again the instinct, don't refuse, and the child logic that had saved her then. He didn't need to speak. He never had. In time, the dread softened, the way a bruise does. Sometime in college, it left her for long stretches. She told no one except in fragments. When she finally posted the story to a private circle, her mother texted back. "Yes, I remember that dream. You called him the bad man. I prayed over you." And there were the losses. In her sophomore year, her brother died at 21. In grad school, her father, 3 years after. A different kind of silence filled the house then. Not the charged hush of a closed closet, but the practical, awful quiet of chairs that wouldn't be filled again. Part of her, that old superstition that names can summon, wondered about connection. Before any of it, when they were kids, her brother had said he felt sure something bad would happen to their family, sooner rather than later. They even made a game of guessing who, as if planning might blunt it. He'd been right about the sooner. Was the hat and the hand just a shape of a frightened mind gave to a fact it could sense but not understand? Or was it something that patiently watched and waited at thresholds? Sometimes, unlocking her own door at night, Mara catches herself glancing to the space just behind her shoulder. Not expecting exactly, just checking. The feeling rarely comes now. When it does, it feels like the cool of a shadow stepping close. She never kept the gum, but she remembers the way a demand can be made with nothing but a hand. Story 2. She woke with the feeling already there, like the room had remembered something before she did. Elise lay still, listening to the breath beside her. It was 1998, a small apartment building holding more worry than furniture. The kind of year that frayed both ends of the day. Bills, hours, the slow scrape of stress. Elise had taught herself not to startle at noises, pipes, neighbours, footsteps in the hall. But this wasn't a sound. This was pressure. A hush that said, "Look." She opened her eyes to the dark and saw it where the wall met the edge of the dresser. A shape the light from the street couldn't collect. Tall and impossibly black, as if it drank the dark around it. A hat, old-fashioned, highly crowned, sat where a face should have been. No features. Elise didn't breathe. Don't move, and it might unsee you, she told herself. Her chest tightened. "David," she whispered, careful not to break the air. "Wake up." The figure did not shift. It waited. David blinked awake, confused, following her gaze. His breath changed when he saw it. One quick inhale, then stillness. "Do you see?" "I see it," he said, too quickly. The silhouette leaned, not a step, closer in intent than in distance, like someone bowing to peer through glass. Elise felt the blanket against her arms, the exact weight of it, as if the bed were trying to keep her. There was room for a voice in her throat. She didn't give it one. David's hand found her wrist. "I'm turning on the light," he murmured, as if courtesy mattered to whatever stood there. He swung his legs over the side, toes searching for the rug. The figure held its non-face toward them. The light came on. The corner was an ordinary corner again. White paint, hairline crack. The dresser she'd owned since high school. The thing had not retreated. It had ended, like a scene cut to the next. The after image it left was the posture, the slight hunch, curious, clinical, as if studying them the way people study animals. Elise realized she'd been holding a thought. If I don't refuse it, if I don't speak, nothing worse will come in. She let the thought go and felt the shake arrive in her hands. They made a circuit of the apartment with the lights on. Bathroom, closet, front door chain still set. Nothing missing. Nothing moved except their sense of what the room might contain. They tried on reasons, stress, waking dreams, the way shadows stack on corners. Reasons helped until both of them remembered saying "I see it" at the same time. After that night, they slept with the lamp closer. They didn't talk about it often. When they did, it was never long. The story stopped at the click and stayed there. Years later, their child, Rowan, would catch a late-night stream about figures that come when the body is heavy and the mind is thin at the edges. People in chat typed the same name, Hatman. Rowan asked them to tell the apartment story again, and they did, unchanged. Neither had heard the name in 1998. Neither needed it to know the shape. Rowan has seen shadows too, edges moving where edges shouldn't, but never the hat. Some nights, unlocking a door, Rowan feels that old pressure, the sense of being regarded. It passes, usually. Elise's memory keeps a single frame, a tall Vanta-black figure, hat precise as a cutout, leaning like a question mark that never needed a question. Story 3. Every night, somewhere between the cartoons and the part where the house went thin, Ash watched the hallway. That was where he stood. Tall, hat, long coat, a darkness that shaped itself like a man. He didn't move. He only watched back. The house had the kind of quiet that collected in corners. Ash was little enough to count sleep by the ladder rungs of a wooden bunk bed, and old enough to know when a room was not empty. His brother slept hard. Their parents called it a wild imagination. Ash called it the thing at the end of the hall. Some kids were afraid of what might be under the bed. Ash was afraid of the space just outside the door, where the hallway light would sometimes flicker. It was not dreams. Ash was awake, moving, looking. The first time the kitchen clattered, it sounded like all the pots had decided to jump at once. Everyone in the house got up and went to check. Nothing on the floor, nothing out of place. The sound had happened, the mess had not. Later, Ash found 3 black stripes carved into the bunk's wood. Parallel, permanent, as if the bed itself had been marked. They tried scrubbing until the grain felt raw. The marks didn't lift. The house began teaching lessons. Don't look directly at the bright figure in the corner. It vanishes when you meet its eye. Don't answer when the wind outdoors says your name. Don't keep your hand outside the blanket. One night, something touched Ash's fingers. Soft, careful, the way a parent might check for fever. It was the gentleness that terrified him. He yanked his hand back, like he'd touched a burner, and slept with fists after that. He told himself rules could make it manageable. Hallway light on, door half shut, eyes on the floor when you pass. Small costs paid nightly. The light flickers came in 3s. The watching continued. Out on the balcony, near dusk, Ash looked up and froze. A woman hung there, upside down, hair falling toward the railing, dress black against a sky going slate. No face Ash could hold on to. The figure stared as if deciding something, then rose, simply unhooked from gravity, and slid upward, off the edge of sight. Ash stopped going out at dusk, stopped mentioning things at dinner. The more he kept it in, the more the house learned the outline of his silence. 4 a.m. Ash woke because the bed had a weight it shouldn't. A large, dark shape knelt over him, on the ladder side, close enough to feel the breath. Ash's hand crept forward, slowly, and touched the shape at the edge. Cloth, not cloth, like touching smoke that remembered being fabric. It recoiled, fast, and crawled away down the side of the bed. A heavy rustle that found the floor and vanished. The ladder shook once, then stilled. Ash lay rigid, counting heartbeats. The hallway light flickered 3 times like a nod. The image that held, the one that didn't fade, wasn't the hat in the hall or even the upside-down woman. It was the kneeling, a mass above him, intent and wordless, close enough to be touched, and then the retreat. He changed because of it. At school, Ash snapped fast, swung hard, couldn't seem to hold his temper inside of the cage of his ribs. The guidance counselor said, acting out. Ash's brother said something else and watched the hallway like it owed him an answer. When it finally broke, when night after night tilted toward the same pressure and the house felt full to the rafters, Ash's brother did the only thing he could think to do. He walked room to room with a steadiness that felt bigger than the house, calling the air to clear, pushing whatever clung there out. He didn't ask it to leave. He told it. And then, quiet. The kitchen stopped performing its empty crashes. The hallway light learned to mind itself. The hat at the end of the hall never came back. For years, the house held. It didn't mean the world had gone ordinary. Every so often it pressed a finger to the glass again. A night when the room temperature dropped as if a window had opened that never existed. A voice saying Ash's name from the wrong direction on an empty street. The quick periphery of a bright figure that dissolved when chased. Once, long after the bunk bed had been sold, long after the marks on its side had become someone else's mystery, a small elephant statue toppled at night. 3 kilos of carved stone, solid, steady, and then shattered across the floor. No vibration, no draft, no step too close. Just the sound of it deciding to fall. Ash sometimes runs a hand along the finished wood in other people's houses and thinks of those black stripes, how some marks are made to stay. He doesn't fear the hallway anymore, but when a bowl blinks 3 times fast, he pauses, looks at the doorway, to be sure no one is there. Story 4. He woke on his back, staring at the flat dark of his ceiling, and couldn't move. In the doorway stood the hat and the coat in the absence of a face. Closer than last time. Closer than ever. Kai had seen him once before, when he was small enough to stand on a chair to brush his teeth. 6, maybe 7. Different house, different street. Same cutout of a man. Years without him, then the move. Now his new bedroom, learning his outline. He didn't post about things like this. He barely talked about them. But at 5:43 a.m., your own room can feel like a confession booth. The weight that held him wasn't his hands. It was as if the air itself had hardened, poured like plaster over his body, leaving his eyes out to sea. 15 seconds, he would later guess. Long enough to count. Too long to be nothing. The Hat Man didn't step forward. He only stood there. An edge carved out of the doorway. Brim, a black subtraction. Kai looked without moving his head, testing the tiny muscles that still belonged to him. Nothing. Nothing again. He told himself the same thing he'd told himself as a kid. This is your brain waking out of order. This is a trick. The trick silently stared back. Then, as if a switch inside him flicked, he could move. Control returned in a rush that made his fingers tingle. He rolled onto his left side, turned the phone over just for proof of its light, saw the hour, and let the glow go dark. Don't sleep on your back, he thought. Stay small, keep the spine curved, the way you do in a storm. He closed his eyes and drifted back to sleep. The noise hit like a radio being yanked between stations. Hissing, high, full of teeth. His body locked again. He knew with the particular clarity that lives in fear that if he could just move a thumb, he'd be free. Then, his sister screamed. It came from the doorway. It came from inside the static sound. It didn't really come at all. He knew that even while it tore through him. But his body didn't care about knowing. It cared about the sound. Blood-curdling, like the word was invented for it. "Stop," he tried to say, to the sound, to the room, to himself. His mouth didn't try back. Through the hiss came a second voice, the worn, familiar shape of his mother's words, as if she were talking to him from the hall with the door only half open. No sentences, no meaning, just syllables. The Hat Man stood where he had stood, a patience carved out of black, as if listening. Kai had the thought that this wasn't about seeing at all. It was about how close the sound could get before something else followed it in. Move. 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 He aimed everything at the smallest freedom he could imagine. The corner of his jaw, the twitch of a finger trapped under a sheet, the slow pull of a breath that might split the shell. It broke. The hiss collapsed. The shape in the doorway wasn't a man anymore. It was just a doorframe, paint, shadow stacked on shadow. He could hear the real silence of the house again, the normal kind, with the refrigerator in it and a pipe settling somewhere deep. The image that stuck wasn't the hat or even the angle of the brim. It was the sense of it leaning, nearer this time, the way a person might bend to read small print on a label. He lay there and counted to 20, then to 40, just to be sure the counting was his. When he sat up, his hands shook in a way that embarrassed him even though no one could see. He turned the phone over again. 5:43. Memorized the numbers like coordinates that could explain something later. He knew the terms: sleep paralysis, hallucinations, brain protecting itself by misfiring the order of waking. He knew them and believed them, and still, the shape of the night didn't fit neatly into them anymore. 2 attacks back to back felt like a hunt, like pressure building and then letting go. He did the small things you do when nothing can be done. Propped the pillow behind him so he wasn't flat, decided the hallway light should stay off because the dark felt less false when it was honest. Told himself he'd ask for ideas in the morning, maybe read what other people did to keep this from happening twice. From the next room came nothing. No footsteps, no sister calling, no mother's half-asleep voice. When the quiet stretched, Kai let himself lie back, on his side, one hand set where he could see it. He closed his eyes. He did not listen for the hiss. He heard it anyway, only in memory. Exactly long enough to count to 15. Story 5. At 5, Theo learned that a doorway can hold more than a door. He opened his eyes and found a man fitted to the frame like a carving. Hat brim low, teeth too long for the smile. Eyes lit from inside. The first family home kept the children at the far end. 2 rooms side by side and a short hallway that felt longer at night. Their parents called it the quiet wing. Quiet was not what Theo remembered. He remembered the way sound seemed to step back and leave him alone with the dark. His brother slept in the room next door. Sometimes they whispered across the hall before lights out and let the house take them. This wasn't a dream. Theo knew the difference even then. His eyes were open. The hallway nightlight made a thin wedge across his floor. In that slice of not quite dark stood the figure, an explorer's hat like in the movies, a thin hooked nose catching the light, teeth barred as if smiling for a coin. The eyes weren't eyes. They were small, hot things, red, then yellow. like embers pushed into a mask. It did not blink. It did not move. Theo tried to shout and found the voice right away. The sound tore out of him, straight through the figure. And his father hit the door. The instant the door swung wide, the carved man wasn't there. There was only paint and wood and his father's breath, fast from the hall. They checked the room, closet, underbed, corners. Theo could point to where it had been and still felt foolish pointing at nothing. His father said the usual things. Theo nodded like a person who just learned a new rule. Keep the nightlight. Keep the door cracked. Keep your eyes on the blanket, not the hall. The rule worked, until it didn't. 2 more times in that house, his eyes opened to something already there. The second time, it was simply a shadow taller than the frame it stood in. A vertical midnight with shoulders. The third time, it came walking. Not like a man, not like anything he knew, but with a stiff, segmented motion. Each step a clean, wrong hinge. The word that arrived in his head was elemental. He stopped calling for his father. What would he say? Come see the thing that doesn't move until you look away? He learned to study the door with the corner of his eye, to memorize the room the way divers memorize air. He slept light, he woke fast. He hated the quiet wing. His brother, meanwhile, began describing a different trap. Night after night, he dreamed he was locked in the garage with something hunting him. The thing never showed its true face. It borrowed one's. An animal shape, a person they all knew from TV. Sometimes just a presence that made the tools on the wall feel like eyes. It announced itself with a call, strange and simple, like an owl trying words. Theo heard the noise when his brother told it, and the small hairs on his arms rose. He began to dread the garage door just as much as his own. Neither boy said the word haunted. Both learned to move quickly through certain thresholds. One last night sealed the pattern. The tall shadow filled the doorway again, owning the frame the way a picture owns a wall. Theo sat up too fast, dizziness like heat in his ears. Move, and it will move. Don't move, and it will stay. The choice felt like a test he'd already failed. He slid from the bed, feet silent on the carpet, eyes never leaving the cutout of black. If it stepped, he didn't see it, but his skin felt the nearness, the way you feel weather changing. He reached the door, lifted his hand to the knob, and his father's arm pushed past his, flinging the door wide as if to catch something. Again, the figure ended. Not fled, ended. The frame was only a frame. The image that stayed was not the red-yellow heat of the eyes or the teeth. It was the posture, perfectly fitted to the wood, smiling without breath, as if hammered into place. A hieroglyph, he thought later, though he hadn't had that word then, a sign that meant itself. They moved. New house, new hallway, no quiet wing. The nights went ordinary in the way nights should be ordinary. Heat clicks, a pipe knocking once, the comfortable argument of branches against glass. The waking visions didn't follow. His brother's garage hunter stopped visiting his sleep. But the old house never unclenched its hold. Driving past years later, Theo would feel his shoulders rise like a dog catching a scent. He could tell himself the rational versions: night terrors, misfiring brains, stress. but his palms still sweated on the steering wheel. "Dangerous place," his body said. "Keep going." Sometimes very late, when his apartment settles and a draft runs the hallway, he'll hear a neighborhood owl and think of the other call, the one his brother described, and the way the garage door looked in the dark, like a mouth. He doesn't watch doorways anymore. He notices them, that's different. But when a frame catches his eye, he waits a beat longer than needed, half bracing for something that smiles without moving.